This will be a day long remembered. Now I am the master.
Welcome to another episode of Legends and Theories. And welcome to part 2 of my video taking a look at the Scooby Doo Mystery Incorporated villains. And this is looking at the main antagonists of it. And since their plans directly involve Mystery Incorporated, I'm going to be taking a look at changes to their plans that can be made for them to be able to succeed in the episodes where they did fail. And if they did succeed, I'm going to see if there is any changes that could be made to the plans for it to be more successful. Well, some of them really don't need any changes because the plan was already the best it could be. So, for it, I'm just going to be assuming the fact that they need to keep Mystery Incorporated alive and aren't able to kill them until the final one, which is the evil entity being released. So, going into it, I'll be going through these in chronological order, as I did with the previous video. And this will only be looking at the stuff related to the Curse of Crystal Cove, the original Mystery Incorporated, and the Hunt for the Planispheric Disk. Everything else is in part 1, and if you want to check that out, that video came out yesterday. Once again, happy Halloween, and let's go straight into this. First off, we're starting with the Ghost Girl, and while this does seem like a villain of the week for nearly the entire episode, it actually is revealed at the end that it is a complete ruse set up by Mr. E, just so the kids can learn more about the original Mystery Incorporated and their disappearance. And through that, they're put down the path to eventually solving the mystery of the Curse of Crystal Cove and the treasure and everything with the evil entity. So he does hire a woman named Alice May. That's what she's going by. It is clearly not her real name, and she is impersonating the daughter of the Creeper, Alice Carswell, and acting like she's getting revenge for Mystery Inc. going and getting her father arrested. But Carswell never had a daughter, and, well, there's really no way for her to actually be connected to him. And it really doesn't matter because all that mattered was getting that yearbook to them and pushing them further down the path to discovering what actually happened. So no changes need to be made to this plan since Mr. E even goes and springs her from prison to make sure that she doesn't turn on him and to have her work for him in the future. Now to take a look at the other half of the Aphrodite plan, and this was the one done by Professor Pericles to go and create a distraction so he could get various items he needed to assist him in his plan. And I think that he probably should have had a little more of a backup because he was pretty close to being defeated because he would have had to take Aphrodite out to be able to use Mystery Inc. once again for his plans, but all the things did work out for him. I do think that he probably should have had a little easier spell to counter and maybe put something different in her path, but things did work out in the end and was able to ultimately succeed with this part of his plan, and not too many changes are needed, even though there was a little bit of risk. He had to take that to be able to get that reward, and if he did something less risky, it probably wouldn't have succeeded because he had to go to those specific places to get those items. So ultimately, while yeah, he could have done things differently, this was it's still a great risk, but the reward was worth it for him. So I think that, well, like I said, there can be changes. It doesn't need to be made. Up next, we have Danny Darrow, and this is him going in his old house, which has collapsed underground. He has set up various traps for the original Mystery Incorporated, being Brad, Judy, Mr. E, Cassidy, and Pericles. He set these traps up so that they weren't able to go and get the pieces of plastic disc he has. And also, there's nothing he could have done to prepare for the new Mystery Incorporated. He very much became obsessive over the piece and didn't know that the original Mystery Incorporated broke up when Pericles, alongside Fred Jones Sr., went and scared off the rest of the members of the original Mystery Incorporated. So there really was nothing that he could do to change his plans, since he wouldn't have been able to expect someone like Fred, who was an expert in traps, to show up. And through that, he was defeated, and this is one where really there's no way for him to have changed his plans, because he wanted to be reclusive and he wanted to keep this piece away from everyone. So there was really no way for him to get updates on the modern world and what was going on. So, yeah, honestly, for this one, really, there is really no changes he could make to the plan that could have led to him keeping this piece safe. And in the end, he eventually does give it up and allows himself to be freed from the curse. Up next, we have the haunting of the Jones house. And this is Professor Pericles' plan to haunt Mayor Jones and scare him into revealing the location of his piece of the planispheric disc, which he stole from Pericles back when Pericles betrayed his friends in the original Mystery Incorporated. And honestly, the plan was already brilliant. He was able to get away with it. He did leave the birdseed behind, and yeah, he didn't really need to keep that with him, but it really wouldn't have changed much. He still would have been nearly caught, but would have still been able to escape and get that piece of the planispheric disc, escaping and making away with it so he can go and continue with his plan. So no real changes needed because the plan already succeeded, and it really didn't need any changes because there was really nothing to improve too much, because he knew Mystery Incorporated would interfere, and he was able to fight them off well enough, and he was able to also escape from capture, so no real changes were needed in the plan. Up next, we have the Obliteratrix, and I probably just said that wrong, but this is once again Alice May, and again, that's not her real name, but that's the only name we really have for her. She's once again hired by Mr. E to cause a distraction for the new Mystery Inc., and the entire reason behind that now is to drop Professor Pericles so he could be distracted and Mr. E could take Pericles' piece of the planispheric disc. And with this, yeah, there's really kind of nothing he could have done to see that Angel, or as we know her at this point, Cassidy Williams, coming in and saving Mr. Inc., because his plan would have worked, and it's very clear he still does love her and wanted to actually do something to harm her. So really, the only thing he could have done is get rid of his feelings for her and try and anticipate that she would interfere. But again, there really was no way for him to know that it was going to happen. So this is something where he basically had a perfect plan, and it was just spoiled by interference of a third party And if it wasn't forecasted coming in, the plan almost certainly would have worked and would have drawn Pericles out just long enough for him to be able to take his piece of the disc, although it wouldn't have worked for too long because Pericles was already planning to go and take out End Machine and force Mr. E into an alliance with him. And just to show that this video is a lot shorter, I am already at the end of Season 1 and about halfway through the list, and I'm only at about 11 minutes when, at this point in yesterday's video, I was at like the 40-minute mark. So going into the final one of Season 1, we have the Freak of Crystal Cove. And this is actually Mayor Fred Jones Sr., and he's enacting the same plan he pulled up against the original Mystery Incorporated, where he's trying to scare them away through any means necessary from looking into the treasure and to gain any pieces of the planispheric disk they have, so that he is ultimately able to go and gain the treasure for himself. And the entire thing is, his plan worked until Fred was put in mortal danger, and him actually caring about Fred made him go back, save him, giving Fred the chance to go in to take him down and expose who he is. If it wasn't for his love of Fred and he was just willing to let his son die, or well, the adopted son, because Fred's actual parents are Brad and Judy, and he took Fred from them and raised him as his own son. So ultimately, there really was no way for his plan to work, because his plan essentially would have worked if he was just willing to let his son die. And yes, that's one of those things where, yeah, you could very easily say, oh, he just has to let his son die, but there's no way that he would actually let that happen, because even though Fred isn't his biological son, in all instances for him, Fred is his actual son. So I think that it is a ultimately tragic fate for him with that, in terms of the fact that he gets caught, but he also wasn't a great person, so he did need to be caught. But it is a great tragedy for him that what caused him to fail is the fact that he had leverage to keep Brad and Judy away, which honestly made no real sense, since it's very clear in the rest of the show they really don't care too much about Fred and only care about getting the treasure. Up next, we have Dark Lilith, and this is another plan by Mr. E, and he has instructed Hot Dog Water to get the next piece of the planispheric disk, and it's on top of a old Spanish conquistador ship, and through it there is really no way for her to get through, so she creates the character of Dark Lilith using the old Manticore stuff to lure Fred there to have him spring all the traps so she can just go through and take the piece. And in the end, she eventually just, through a relationship with Velma, decides not to help Mr. E, gives Velma the piece of the planispheric disk, and flies off to try and escape from Mr. E. And honestly, there really is no way for the plan with her specifically to work, because her friendship with Velma would have led to this situation happening regardless of any changes that he could have made with her specifically. So the best thing he could have done is break Alice May out of prison again and have her do it, because she's been shown to be very clearly far more skilled than Mystery Incorporated and put them in a very bad position in the previous episode that she was in, where she basically was going to be successful in it if it weren't for the fact that Cassidy showed up to save them. So there really was no way for that original plan to work, but this modified plan would have worked, although it kind of made irrelevant later on. Actually, it really wouldn't, because then they wouldn't have had hot dog water on their side. So this could have changed things later on if he went with someone else, but since there was no way for him to predict it, it is another just random betrayal. There are ways in hindsight he could have changed it and prevented it, but in the moment he really wouldn't have seen this betrayal coming, and that's why it is something that could have been changed, but ultimately wouldn't have been because it was something he couldn't have expected. Up next, we have the ghost of Abigail, Gluck, and the Kriegstaffebots. And this is probably the most outright, darkest thing a Scooby Doo villain has specifically attempted to do besides the Dark Entity. And this is Professor Pericles used a bunch of robots that they're technically not really Nazi robots, but are kind of inspired by Nazi stormtroopers and were built in Germany with Abigail, Gluck, and him to go and look for the piece of planispheric disk. And he sends the Kriegstaffebots against Cassidy to kill her, to stop her from interfering with the plans that he has to manipulate Mystery Inc. And, well, this plan fully succeeds, although it is due to circumstances that he couldn't have really manipulated, with the fact that the base's submarine door was stuck and someone would have to stay behind. And if she did manage to escape from that, I think that just keeping sending the Kriegsatter bots and send a lot more, while also creating a separate mystery to distract Mystery Inc. to be able to kill Cassidy is the way he could have went, but he did get lucky, but this is the best way for him to go in and ensure that she is killed if he was not lucky and she managed to get away in that specific situation. Up next, we have a situation that's honestly extremely rare for Scooby Doo. I can only think of one more situation where this actually happened in a Scooby Doo property, and that is Krampus. And with it, this is actually the new Mystery Inc., as in Fred, Daphne, Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby. Not the original one, which is the group they're actually trying to trap. And they're using Charlie the robot, disguised as Krampus, as a distraction to lure Fred's parents and the rest of the original Mystery Incorporated away from Mr. E's base, and give Hot Dog Water enough time to go and steal the pieces of the planispheric disk that Mr. E and Pericles have. And then they're also, as kind of a secondary goal, testing to make sure that Fred's parents are not reliable and only care about the treasure. And due to that, I think that this plan for them is completely brilliant. And we have to actually look at how the villains would get away with this, because they're the heroes, and this is actually a trap for the villains. And, well, all they really had to do to stop them was probably set up a good security guard for it, Again, probably break Alice May out and have her be defending the pieces of planespheric disc. Although at this point, I think Hot Dog Water does have a good chance of beating her. So there's always that possibility, but that's probably the best thing the villains could do to prevent the Scooby and the gang from tricking them like this. But they really underestimated them, so I don't think they would have went and made these decisions. But that's still the best way for them to have gone and prevented this from happening. Oh, and just a side note, the other one was it was a Scooby Doo animated movie with a mummy in it, and spoilers for that one. Velma was the monster in that one to scare away tomb raiders and other treasure hunters from robbing the tomb of the. It was like a pharaoh or something that I haven't watched that movie in such a long time, but I only remember it due to the fact that Velma was the villain in that one. Well, she's one of the villain is in one of the people scaring people, but ultimately it was for a really good and noble cause. And going to the next one, we have the Horrible Herd, and this is probably one of the most horrific ones that Pericles went and did. This is something that made Mystery not want to work with him anymore because this was crossing some serious moral lines. And Professor Pericles created a mutant creature that gets named as the Horrible Herd. I obviously went together because individually it wouldn't be called a herd. And this is a like bee piranha bull hybrid, and it is sent into Crystal Cove to destroy everything in town. So Mr. Ink has nowhere they could hide the pieces of the planispheric disk that they just stole from Pericles. And all he had to do to defend against them was place guards with the queen, and that would have prevented them from being able to do anything. And again, I feel like he really wouldn't listen to this piece of advice. He is far too arrogant for that, but again, this is just me giving the suggestion of what the best thing for him to do and him and the other antagonists to do to actually be able to get away with their crimes. And this is the best thing for him to do is to actually go in to leave security with the queen so he could prevent them from preventing his plan from happening. Going into the final five of these plans, and this is not at the over 1 hour mark like the previous video, which is a very good thing, especially for the fact of me having time to do other stuff, because that video took forever to make. And this is an extraordinarily convoluted plan, and it took up the most time to write of any of them. So going through the very, very basics, and this is me summarizing things to be very, very simple. Fred is kidnapped by his parents and put into an exact replica of Crystal Cove set up in the old movie studio. In there, his mother Judy, who has been surgically altered to look like an older Daphne, tells him that he is trapped in a version of Crystal Cove where the planispheric disk went haywire and sped up time. Everyone else has died, and she is close to death, but if they go and manage to get the planispheric disk, they can reverse everything and bring everyone back. And then, at the exact same time, she is in contact with her husband Brad, who has been surgically altered to look like Fred. And he is going around and going to the places that Fred says the pieces of the planispheric disk are hidden at. But ultimately, Fred has caught on to what is happening due to the fact that his mother knows nothing about him or Daphne and very easily made a mistake at the beginning. And that leads to the one thing they do to change it is they literally just had to know who their son and actually care about him, which would have caused problems for them because then they probably wouldn't want to kidnap or try to hurt him. But they at least just had to go and look into him and his relationship with Daphne and try to learn at least a little about her. So that's really all they had to do to make sure that they didn't go and mess up. But yeah, ultimately this plan wouldn't have gone too well since they did fail in the end until Heracles went and took Daphne hostage with Kriegstaffebots, and that forced Fred to give away the piece of the planispheric, well, the entire planispheric disk, because they were fully assembled by this point. And ultimately, I think that this is something that they could have been a lot smarter about, where Fred didn't tell them where the actual piece was and continue to lead them on a wild goose chase. So we could have gone and got the planispheric disk later, but yeah, honestly, that's a change the hero had to make, but again, I'm looking at the villain, so I think it is important to mention that. Yeah, there are changes that could have been made, and again, this is one where the villains just got lucky for their success with that, with them actually having a better plan, because this plan is so overly convoluted that it was bound to fail in some way or the other because of, again, just how overly convoluted it is. Up next, we have the Monstrous Freak, and this is a very special one where this one is an actual ghost, and this is the spirit of Fernando Alighieri, who is haunting the sitting room, which is essentially this other place where the best of people are being trapped that were involved with the mystery of Crystal Cove. And he's there haunting it to allow no one to figure out how to destroy the evil entity because he believes he and his men need to be punished for all eternity for what they've done, and if they destroy the evil entity, that won't happen because everything that the entity attached itself to will be undone, and it'll be as if it never existed. And this is one where he did all he could do, but Mystery Inc. was just better than him and more clever than him, so he really had nothing he could have done to prevent them. And honestly, I think that again, there's nothing he could have done, and him trying to do anything just made things worse because he was trying to keep this evil entity imprisoned. But if he did that, it wasn't the brightest plan because it would eventually been released by someone like Pericles. And now, going to the final three episodes of the series, I am going to take a look at the plan broken down by episode, since the plan should be looked at these different stages. And the first part of the plan is the enslavement and eventual mass execution of everyone in Crystal Cove. Yeah, pretty dark stuff. But this is the original Mystery Inc. has captured and enslaved everyone in Crystal Cove besides the members of the new Mystery Inc. Again, that is Scooby and the gang. So he wants them to go in to dig for the entrance to the area the treasure is buried at, or at least the dimensional portals, because they have to go through all these different dimensions. And once this is all done and they go and enter, he's ordered the Kriegstaffebots to go and execute everyone in town. And yeah, again, that's just extraordinarily dark wreckage show, but it's still super interesting. And there's really no way for them to go on and prevent what Fred, Shaggy, Scooby, and the gang did because they need them alive to be able to go and open all of the different doors and be able to lead them to the treasure. So there is ultimately just nothing they could have done to change the plan because any changes they could have made would have involved killing at least one of them, and that would have ruined their plans for them to go and open up the doors so they can go and get to the treasure. And that ties exactly and directly into the next one, which is them going to release the evil entity. And for this, they have kidnapped Hot Dog Water to force the Mystery Inc. gang to go and work for them and open all the gates. But Hot Dog Water does manage to escape temporarily and let the gang go and move forward until she eventually is executed for trying to resist. Got another really dark moment that happens off screen, but it's very clearly implied what happened, and seeing Velma's reaction, you know exactly what happened, that it's just they couldn't show it, and Mystery, who was absolutely done with this, but is being tortured and forced to work with them, is absolutely disgusted at the monster Pericles has become. And just continue through, they want them to open all the gates and then go to release the evil entity and have it empower Pericles and have Brad and Judy be its loyal servants. And while this all does work out for them in terms of releasing the entity and Pericles being taken over by it, the plan is something that would never work because this entity is just pure evil. It wants to destroy and consume, and there was no ways to let any of these mortal beings go and be spared by him, and they were only the beginning of his absolute rampage. And finally, we have the evil entity itself, and its goal is simple: consume all life on Earth and then just continue to become more and more powerful until it has nothing that can oppose it. And the only way it could have gone and prevented what happened to it was essentially impossible because it had to destroy Mystery Inc. and any attempt to do so would have led to them realizing that they were the key to defeating him and would have done so. And even if he did nothing against them, then I think that the Anunnaki that was possessing Nova would have went and told Scooby, and Scooby told everyone else how to go and destroy the evil entity. So really, there's no way for it to have succeeded. And then at the end, it would have reset everything and gone and made this technically all irrelevant. But again, I said I'm not going to be looking at that specific fact. And yeah, this was a lot of fun to do. It's definitely a lot shorter with this being around like 33 minutes right now, so probably like 35 to 37 minutes in total. But taking a look at the stats for this one, we have 5 out of 15 plans being foiled, and then that's an easy 33%. Very easy to do the math for that. And while one of those is technically also success, that is the good guys managing to successfully trick the bad guys with the Krampus situation. And if you go and add that on to the previous numbers that I looked at yesterday, that is 14 out of 37. That gets us up to 52 and gets us 19 out of 52. And the number for that is 37% that got away with it, which is literally just 1% under what happened in the previous video. So really it doesn't change too much. And it's still interesting to go in to look at. But yeah, honestly, it was just again a lot of fun to do this. Really interesting to think through these plans and how they could have succeeded and what could have caused them to be ultimately more successful, even though not all of them were even possible to. Most of them were either there was no way for them to prevent what was happening, or they already succeeded and there was only small changes that could have been made to the plan. But still, honestly, it was just again a lot of fun to make, and I really hope you enjoy it. Once again, happy Halloween, and I'll see you on the next episode of Legends and Theories. Thank you for watching this episode of Legends and Theories. Please subscribe, like the video, share the video, leave a comment, check out the video on screen, and may the Force be with you.